November 3rd, 2013 was the day that I realised that I wished to own a Grail watch. Now at the time I did not know the term Grail watch. I sort of considered it getting one nice watch in my collection. But it was the 3rd of November 2013. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches, and that is a very specific date. How do I remember that? Well, that was my eldest brother's 40th birthday. And I went to see him on his birthday, spend some time with him on his birthday, and I saw the thing that he bought himself for his birthday. And what he bought for himself was an Omega Seamaster GMT. And it is by far the nicest watch at that time that I'd ever seen or experienced. And I immediately felt that watch and went, wow, that is significantly better than the affordable watches that I own. At that particular time, I had not spent very much money on watches. I liked watches, I enjoyed watches. I would always look at watches in shops as I walked past. I had a few in my collection, but they were all super affordable. And I never once allowed myself to even consider the idea of getting an expensive watch. It was just so far out of the realms of financial possibilities for me at the time. But when I held that Seamaster, when I felt the bracelet, when I put it on, and thankfully my wrist is the same size as my brother's wrist, so it fits me perfectly. When I started wearing it, or at least wearing it whilst I was around him, because he would let me wear it, which is very nice, I realized that I'd really like to have a nice watch in my collection. As I mentioned, I don't know at the time the word Grail watch or the term Grail watch. It was like, I just want a nice watch in my collection. But at that time, that watch, he purchased it for 5,000 Australian dollars. Now, thinking about that price now, it's actually a really good price for a brand new Omega GMT, but of course, prices have changed. But it was so far out of the realms of possibility for me. So even then, even though I loved it, even though I liked the idea of getting a really nice watch in my collection, I kind of put it out of my mind. And it stayed out of my mind until late 2015. I made some decisions in my life in 2015 that threw everything into a little bit of turmoil, especially financial turmoil. And I knew it would, but it was a decision that I thought I should do because longer term it would be good. And it ended up being good longer term, but there was a fair bit of turmoil and it was quite difficult at the time. I chose it to be difficult for specific reasons, but it was difficult. And I thought, well, you know what, when I get to the end of this, I think I should maybe treat myself to reward myself for going through a little bit of a hard time to get to something really good. So I thought, well, what would I like to reward myself with? And I thought, of course, I want to get an Omega. Of course, that sort of price range was still a little bit too much for me, but it was the idea of getting that one nice watch in my collection beyond those very affordable watches that I had at the time. So I started putting some time and energy into finding what other watches were available, what I would like to buy at this sort of achievement point in my life. And although I looked at the Omegas, I actually ended up working my way around into other watches and ended up finding this Bulgari. This is the Bulgari Asomina, I think it's called. At the time, I quite liked that sort of brand. As you will probably have noticed in videos of mine before, my ring here, my wedding ring, is actually a Bulgari. It's not so much that I'm into luxury brands at all, but there was just something about it, and I think it was actually this particular ring that I liked that sort of grabbed my attention. So I thought, oh, what else does this brand do? And I saw this particular Bulgari watch, and I really liked it. It was on the used market at the time for a couple of grand, so it was more in a slightly more affordable sort of price range compared to even my brother's Omega. But I loved the dial, I loved the side case profile. But now that I look at this watch, really dislike the big Bulgari logo that's written on the top of the case, but at the time I really liked it. And as I worked through this situation that I was going through and I got to the end of it, unfortunately I got to the end of it and had slightly less money than I'd hoped I would, so I chose not to buy that Bulgari. So this first Grail watch that I had in my head, or that one nice watch that I had in my head, did not end up getting purchased. I've since looked back at this one and I thought I actually still quite like it, but that logo, that big Bulgari on the tops of those sort of case or those lugs there, yeah, I don't think I could get past that today. But back then, I thought this was a beautiful looking watch. So financially, could not sort of justify it. Well, I could have, but it wasn't worth it. I was being smart at the time financially. I hadn't quite achieved what I was kind of hoping that I would have achieved. I was still in a reasonable position, but not as good as I was hoping, so I decided not to buy that watch. I then started going to a bit more of these sort of affordable watches and going into sort of more mechanical watches and buying some Seikos. And it was something that sort of put me on a bit of a journey back onto some more watches, but definitely still more on the affordable scale. And that was till about 2017, because I was at work and somebody walked in and he had an Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean on his wrist. And it was one of the larger Planet Oceans, and I immediately thought, that's a good looking watch. I like it even better than my brother's watch. That's the Omega that I love. And instantly that became my nice watch that I wanted to own. I didn't have the money for it, or couldn't justify it at that point in time, but it stayed my Grail watch for a long period of time. Even as I started this channel, it was my Grail watch. Even if you look at my original logo that I made for this channel, this one up here, that watch that is featured there, that's a Planet Ocean. So at the time, that was my Grail watch. And it was probably around about this time that I started hearing the term Grail watch, and I then started using the term Grail watch versus that one nice watch in my collection. It was also around the sort of time that I decided, actually, I do want a good watch in my collection, and I ended up buying a Longines Hydro Conquest. At the time, I didn't think it was the Grail watch because I was thinking Omegas, but it was probably the closest I could get to at the time. Closest that I could afford or justify. And it's a beautiful watch, my Longines. I still own it today. I still wear it today. A great watch and a really good watch that has then pushed me further into the watch world, because I then realized that for a little bit more money, you can get some amazing watches, and it doesn't have to be that really expensive Omega or that Grail watch. But my idea of a Grail watch then shifted again the day that I saw the Grand Seiko White Birch. The day that that was released, I started seeing pictures of it, I started seeing some videos of it a little bit later on, and it instantly became my Grail watch. It became my Grail watch instantly, partly because of how beautiful it was, because of the quality of it, because of the movement. And I don't usually buy watches because of movements, but the movement of this watch really captivates me. But also it's the size of the watch, because up until that point I've been thinking about the Planet Ocean, but I tried it on a bunch of times, and it's a big chunky watch. I love it. I still like it. I think it's a great looking watch, but it is a big chunky watch. So I don't think it would be my ultimate Grail watch anymore. Perhaps I might buy one day, but because of the size and especially the thickness of it, it's probably not a watch I'd wear a huge amount. And if I'm going to spend lots of money on a watch, I think I need to be able to actually wear it a fair amount. So the Grand Seiko is my Grail watch. And strangely enough, I've been in a position a couple of times now to buy it, financially been in those positions, but I've chosen not to. I've chosen to buy other watches, which I think perhaps were better suited to me and to my budget. And strangely enough, some of those watches that I've bought have turned out to be sort of unexpected Grail watches, watches which I wasn't thinking that they were Grail watches, but wearing them, owning them, and having them now, I was like, yes, these are actually Grail watches that I didn't realize they were Grail watches when I purchased them, including my Black Bay 58 Blue. Yes, there's a lot spoken about this particular Tudor. There's a lot of hype around this particular Tudor, and it's really justified. I haven't made my full review video of this one yet. I'm going to do it, but in that video, I'm going to say, yes, everything they say about it is true, which is a little bit boring, but it's true. But there's other ones in my collection too, just like my Mont Blanc or my Mont Blanc Nicholas Roussek watch that I purchased that I was a bit scared about purchasing, but has turned out to be such a beautiful watch. And I have actually ended up being one of my most worn watches in my collection too, as well as my IWC Spitfire. Another watch which I was really attracted to, but a little bit scared of buying, but has turned out to be another one of my most worn watches in my collection. And it is so good that it deserves to also be called a Grail watch. And of course, I've got other watches in my collection that are a little bit more affordable, or maybe a little bit achievable, like my Christopher Ward, like my Stowa, like my Oris. All incredible watches, all watches that deserve to be called something more than just a watch. They are something very special, and I think they're Grails as well. So my idea of Grail watches has changed, except for that sort of very traditional idea of a Grail watch. That real, what is a Grail watch? Well, for me, it's still going to stay as that Grand Seiko White Birch, but I've subdivided the idea of Grail watch. I think there is more affordable Grail watches, ones which are hard to find, but when you find them, you go, yes, this is amazing. There's more achievably priced Grail watches, just like that Stowa or the Oris. And then there's some unexpected Grail watches, like the Mont Blanc and also that IWC. But one day, I think I may still buy that Grand Seiko. And it'll be very interesting if I actually buy it whether I actually then really connect with it. This is a watch that I've tried on a bunch of times. So I've realized that, yes, if I'm actually ever going to buy this one, I need to make sure that it is the right watch. I've gone into a Grand Seiko boutique every time I'm even in an area that is close to it and gone and tried it on. So one day I might end up buying it. In fact, next year I'm planning to go to Japan, and perhaps I may end up buying it over there. I'd be really interested to know what your Grail watch is. And I'd even be more interested to know, has your Grail watch sort of changed over the years? Leave me a comment down below, and maybe watch one of these videos next.